Welcome everyone. It's 3 o'clock here in Finland, and I think it's 1 o'clock British summer time. So let's start. And welcome to my session about Intranet with themes. So do's and don'ts from one real life customer case. I did with one customer last year. You should now hear my voice and see my screen. So please shout or something if you have any problems. This is me. My name is Karoliina Kettukari. I'm from Finland. I do Office 365 and Microsoft Teams user adoption, change management. I work as a senior consultant in a company called Tulava. And I'm very active in Twitter, very active in LinkedIn, so you can, of course, add me as a contact in there if you want to. And there's also not only one, but two online conferences this week. The other one is SharePoint Saturday Warsaw, and it's not in Saturday, it's in Friday. And that's funny thing is, at least for me, is that they called me a queen of user adoption. So I think I should have like a crown instead of this like Teams, super cool Teams hat. But maybe that's enough of me. Let's get down to business. So this was the starting point of our project. It's a very traditional, very normal SharePoint Intranet. I know it's in Finnish, but it's an actual picture from the actual Intranet the company had at the moment. And in this session, I will tell you how we ended up from this SharePoint Intranet to actually this. So it's the same Intranet, but it's in Teams. And I know the pictures are encrypted in the mystic language of Finnish, but don't worry because I actually built a demo for you for this session, and the demo is in English, so it doesn't matter whether this is in Finnish at the moment. A short backstory of this project and of this company. So the customer is Liikenneturva. It's a Finnish road safety council, and it's a small company. So they have 50 employees, but they are all around Finland. So they have offices all around Finland, and they do very mobile work. So they move a lot around Finland. And I think maybe these things I will tell you today, they are best suitable for small companies from maybe 10 to 200 or even 300 employees, maybe even 500 employees. It depends on how many different units you have, how many different departments you have. But of course, all of these tips are also usable if you have bigger companies, bigger organizations. But Liikenneturva, they have 50 employees. And as I showed you in the picture, they had a classic SharePoint Intranet site done in Office 365. But it was actually done pretty much right away the Office 365 first came out. So it wasn't modern, it was classic, it didn't work on mobile. And of course, the funny thing is that the Road Safety Council, they move a lot at their work, but they didn't have any mobile tools they could use. So they asked, we sat down, they asked, oh, we want a new Intranet. Can you please do us a modern SharePoint Intranet in Office 365? And then we sit down, we thought about it, and then we started thinking, what if, do we really want to do just another SharePoint Intranet? Especially when the company was so small, we thought that maybe we have this tool in Office 365, it's called Teams, you have maybe heard of it, I don't know. What if we cut out the middleman? So the middleman, of course, being SharePoint in this case. So what if we could utilize Teams as our Intranet for as long as possible, and just as a bonus, we could also then have, of course, Teams meetings, and we could utilize Teams for our teamwork, Teams for our projects, and so on. So, and they thought about it for a while because Liikenneturva, they are a very traditional organization. They have pretty maybe old people working there. They have used to using pens, papers, so on. So they're pretty traditional. But they thought about it, and then they were like, okay, let's give it a try. And basically this is what we did. So we had a planning phase. We had interviews with people, and we did not only interview people about Intranet. We also interviewed them about ways of working, what kind of tools they have at the moment, what kind of document management processes they have at the moment, about communication, about collaboration. And it was pretty interesting because they are a small company, but they're very active using all the kind of different tools. They had like WhatsApp, they have Facebook, they had Intranet, Google Drive, like anything. So the current state was pretty complicated. Then, of course, we created some kind of vision. We wanted to simplify the tools we had. They wanted to simplify the ways of working they had. And they also thought that it was very challenging because the information was divided in so many different tools and places. And then pretty much right away, we started testing. So we did lots of Teams pilots. And basically, we did Intranet team pilot for a very early stage in this project. So we created a team for Intranet, and that was like a pilot team. We tested everything there, like what kind of channels, what kind of features we could use, what works, what didn't work. We also had a team for our project, and we also had a team, some other project pilot teams. And as I said, they were a traditional company, and at first the management was pretty unsupportive because they didn't see any added value for Teams or updating Intranet whatsoever. But we had some management workshop, and after the management workshop, they actually became very interested and very supportive towards our project. So even in a small company, it's super important to also get the approval from the management to move on with these kind of things. Then for the training part, actually this company, they had virtual coffee breaks like long before this Corona situation. So every Friday, they had this virtual coffee break with videos and everything, because they are all around Finland. They don't see each other very often. So that was one place they really promoted the new Intranet. They really promoted Teams and all the new tools you have inside Teams. And actually, I think I saw Alexander Egger's session a little bit earlier on today, and he talked about user adoption in small companies. And he said that in small companies especially, it's very important to talk to people, live or via videos. And I felt just the same in here. So they actually did very extensive road trip. So one of our project managers, she drove through all of the offices they have in Finland and had face-to-face training with everyone. And it took, of course, quite a lot of time, but it was a super effective way to get people engaged, to get people excited about the new features. And basically like download all the apps, go through notification settings, all like the basic stuff. And then, of course, we had some online infos, online support, support group in Teams, and so on. But I think the interesting part in this project was that it really it wasn't a project at all. It basically was a super dynamic development, like agile ways of working, where we created one pilot group. Then we developed it during piloting, and then after go live, we didn't stay in the same stage. So at the moment, they have been using that Teams Intranet for 1 year now, and I think it's very different now than it was a year ago, because it's constantly changing, moving all the time. Maybe they have created some new power-ups or flows in their intranet, and of course updated also the static content. But that was basically the technical background, technical information about this project. And then I thought it would be nice to show you in real life what a intranet in Teams could mean, go through some settings and other stuff in Teams. So I created this for you. So welcome to our intranet, or my intranet, exactly. So this is my demo environment, and this here is our intranet. This intranet I built here, it follows pretty much the same structure that the customer really had, but I made it a bit simpler for this demo purposes. But let's go through some settings. Let's go through some channels and other stuff we have in here. As you can see, it's of course organization-wide team. So every person that comes to my organization, that is in my AD, is automatically part of this team. And they cannot leave the team, which is important. At the moment, you can have 5,000 people in your team. Actually, I think Microsoft released last week that you can soon have up to 10,000 people in a team. So technically, you could have Teams Intranet for 5,000 people, but I don't know would that work in real life. But with 50, with 200, with 300 people, it works perfectly. If we go to team settings, so manage team right here. As you can see, sadly, I'm at the moment the only user in my demo environment. I'm the owner and the only member in my own intern team, but I hope I will maybe get some more demo users here later on, so I can demo some more features also. But actually here is one super important thing, and it's this picture. So every team should have a picture that describes what kind of team are you doing, what they're doing in your team. And of course, with Intranet, we wanted to utilize this kind of eye information picture. Of course, my description for my team is Intranet with Teams, because it's a wow thing. If we go to settings, there are maybe some settings you would like to go through before you are going to release your Intranet to the public. So the team picture, of course, is here, but then we have the member permissions. And now the thing is that, of course, you have to train your users. You have to train your end users what they can do in Teams, what they shouldn't do in Teams, and what do they have to do if they, for example, delete a channel by accident. But when we are talking about Intranet, I think it's maybe easier if you take some of these boxes away right away. So for example, we want that our Intranet has pretty static structure. So there isn't new channels coming every day and then some old channels going away, being removed every other day. So maybe you want to take out the member permissions to create and update channels. And of course, at the same time, it takes away the permissions to create private channels. And then I think it's also a nice idea to take away the permission to delete channels, because that's something people can do by accident. Even if we train them, they can do it by accident. So it's just a precaution. If you want to, you're going to also restrict like member permissions for removing apps and so on. But it's up to you. Basically, it's up to the organization. Other thing I want to show you here in the settings is this fun stuff. So I would say that always use the fun stuff. So the fun stuff is GIFs in Teams, it's stickers, memes in Teams, because it really makes this stuff fun. And it's a super easy way to get people discussing with each other. But this setting right here, this is something you could maybe consider, because do you want to allow people to use moderate GIFs or maybe filter out the GIFs in all the most strict level? Because even the moderate level, it maybe can contain some inappropriate GIFs, and maybe then for the internet part, you want to utilize the strict setting in here. Then the last thing in settings is tags. And tags is something that came out a few weeks ago, and it's actually something I'm really excited about. So if we go back to the members section, and sadly it's still only me here, you can see tags in here. The thing is, you can create manual tags for certain people. For example, you can create HR tag for all the HR people, or marketing tag for all the marketing people, or for example, supervisor tag for all the supervisor people. And then you can utilize these tags when you mention people in your intranet. So for example, if you have a news that's directed to supervisors, but everyone can read it, you can then tag supervisors in your news. The difficult thing about tags right now is that it's totally manual work. So you have to create tags manually, and you have to tag every people separately. But if you have like 50 users, if you have even 200 users in your intranet, it's okay, it's doable. But for maybe like 500 users, for 1,000 users, I think it's pretty much manual work. But this is something I really like, and I really see lots of use cases for tags, especially in Teams intranet. Then we have a few channel settings. So here I'm in my general channel, and if I go to my channel settings, this is something you should also consider. So if we have the general channel, do we want to keep it as like the most official place where you keep all of the most official news, all most official information? So only owners can post messages, or then anyone can post messages. That's maybe something you want to consider. Okay, then about the channels. So one thing we really considered in our project was that what kind of channels do we want to create? How many channels is enough? Is there a thing as too many channels in a team? So as for technical restrictions, you can have 200 channels in a team and 30 private channels. But if you really have a team with 200 channels, I think that's pretty too much. So in this case, we had maybe the channels were the same as the sections in intranet or the metadata in intranet use. So we have, for example, HR, we have marketing, we have sales, so departments. then we also have social media. So you can, for example, build using Teams connectors or using Power Automate. You can build flows that bring, for example, Twitter feeds to your intranet, or for example, if you have some kind of RSS newsfeed you want to implement here, it's totally doable with the connectors. Then we had some office channels for different offices the customer had. For example, they talked about the cleaning of the office, if there was something wrong or something, for example, bananas were out of the kitchen or something like that. So office channel is also a good idea. And this strategy channel, this was actually super interesting. And for me, I think also it was super important because, as I said, the company was very traditional, and the management at first, maybe they weren't so super excited about this project. But they had this strategy planning work they were doing, and they created a channel in Teams for that. So this was a way to communicate about the strategy work. This was a way to ask comments, to share what they had done in the management group. And it really brought the whole strategy planning much more available to the whole company and not just the management team. So this is actually something I was very proud of. And then they had this well-done channel. So you have maybe noticed you can use praise in Teams, as you can use praise in Yammer. And this actually was something that wasn't available in SharePoint at all. So I could choose, for example, awesome unicorn. The sad thing is that I cannot praise myself, so I can't praise anyone here at the moment. But they created the praise channel, and it was super easy, super fun way to say to your coworker that, hey, well done, you did an awesome job. And of course, you don't have to use the praise function. You can just write or use GIFs like, hey, good work. So this is actually one of their favorite channels. And it was very active also. And basically, the channels in here, they are used for news. They are used for discussion, conversation, commenting. But of course, Intranet is also more than just news. And Intranet also has lots of static content. So instructions, they might be documents, they can be SharePoint sites, whatever. And then we started thinking, what are we going to utilize for those static content? And maybe as you can see, I don't have the wiki here in any channel. And actually one of my pro tips is that remove the wiki immediately and use OneNote instead of wiki. Because if you remove wiki from the tab, the content is lost forever. There is no trash bin for wikis, which is pretty peculiar. So we used OneNote instead of wiki. And actually the company, it was so small that we used OneNote for all the static information that they needed. Of course, in files section, you can have your documents, for example, some PowerPoint templates, some kind of forms, etc. But then all the instructional content was in OneNote. And actually, this is my first session. I have demos. I have never used demos before, and I don't know which demo cards to offer or anything because I have like lots of problems with this at the moment. So in real life, the OneNote was implemented as a tab in Teams, but now in this session I will just show you in here. So basically, we had sections in OneNote which were the same sections as the channels in our team. So we had Office Finland, we have Office Sweden, we have HR, all the same channels you can find in here. And basically, we implemented the OneNote section to the Teams channel. So for example, in the HR channel, you could see the HR section in the OneNote. And basically, there were like vacations, national holidays, absences, all the basic static content that you usually do as a documents or SharePoint pages. And this worked pretty well for them. Of course, when you grow bigger, you usually start to have more processes. You start to have more instructions, like there becomes more hierarchy, there becomes more bureaucracy and everything. So another option you can utilize is, of course, SharePoint. So we wanted to get rid of SharePoint, but it may be that you still need SharePoint for some cases. And maybe my point here is that keep it super simple. So don't start creating another intranet. Just do some very simple static pages, for example, that contains the same kind of information you would write in OneNote. The good thing here is that, of course, with SharePoint, you can utilize more visualizations. You can have more images. Of course, you can use links, documents, and so on. But keep it simple, because you don't want to create another intranet on the top of your intranet. And as the same as you would implement the OneNote tab here for the static content, you could implement the SharePoint tab in here. And yeah, it didn't work either in my demo, so now I have to just show it to you here in a different browser tab. Okay, so as you can see, everything was super simple, nothing super fancy, maybe some simple connectors. This was one thing we utilized that was maybe a bit fancier. So they had few forms. Basically, they were Excel, then you filled it out, then you send it via email to your supervisor, and then they accepted it or denied it, and then they emailed it back to you. But this was something we could automate. So we did some basic forms. For example, here is a lunch voucher order form. And I did this yesterday, and I noticed that forms had this kind of design ideas background. And when I wrote lunch voucher as a title of this form, it suggested that I could use this pizza background. So I really love this pizza background at the moment. But basically, in the HR section, lunch vouchers, the employee fills out the form, and it goes through some very simple approval process done with Power Automate. So yet again, nothing super fancy, but just simple things that are important to employees that work well with employees. One thing also that what we discussed a lot was that how can we activate people discussing in Teams? Because traditional organizations, they hadn't had any similar tool in use before. So how could we convince people that, hey, you can write a post in here, you can ask things from HR in here? So actually, the face-to-face trainings, they helped a lot, and also that we got the management so well to support our project. They had their own strategy channel and so on. That also helped. The project group in the beginning was super eager and activate. So the project group actually in the first place was very actively posting in all the different channels. And then it was basically lead by example. So when other people noticed that, hey, it's okay to post in here, you get answered very quickly, then everyone else also got involved. And of course, when you have all the visualizations, so you can like posts, I have liked my own posts, of course. You can react to post very easily. That's a new thing for people. That's familiar to them from social media in your free time. So that was something a lot of people were very eager to get to try and use at the work environment. So that was pretty nice. Okay, well, that was about my demo. And let's get back to the presentation. So I think from time to time that how much can Office 365 and other tools really change the culture in the organization? Of course, they are enablers, but do the tools themselves really change anything? And in this case, I can really say that the tools changed the culture. Of course, they were open to new ideas. They were very willing to test new things. But all in all, after this new internet, their communication has become faster, more open. I think it was a pretty cute comment that no one misses the old internet. So no one misses SharePoint anymore. As I said, the praise channel, it was used very often. And I think it's all about employee experience, that you have all of your information in one place. You don't have to jump between Teams and Intranet and Teams and Intranet. You have Intranet in your Teams. That's good employee experience. And of course, it's always nice to get praise. So that also lifts your day a bit. They did this employee questionnaire in the end of last year, and the employees in the organization, they felt that their information flow internally had risen by 20% in a year after this Teams implementation, after this Teams Intranet. And I think that's a pretty wonderful number, because the starting point for this company was super traditional, super low. Okay, so there were some good things, some bad things, and maybe some ugly things in this project. Of course, the good thing is that if your Intranet is inside Teams, you will also get Teams meetings, Teams for projects, Teams for teams, etc. And the employee experience, as I said, the employee engagement is super good with this one. It's super easy to get people excited, to people read actually your Intranet news when they are there every day. The other thing that was very good in this project was the mobile usage. So basically, these customers, they didn't have those mobile tools before, and now they can just take their mobile phones, take their iPads, and go to Intranet whenever, wherever they want. Basically, this was a huge thing for them, because basically we changed the whole digital working environment for them at once. And of course, that means that you will become much more open. You have better see-through through the whole organization, but it also requires training. It requires new ways of working. At that maybe wasn't always that easy, because Teams develops all the time. So it may be hard to keep up with all the features that are there. And also maybe there will be some disappointments for features that are not there yet. Because of, for example, if you have SharePoint Intranet and then you have Teams, you can switch between them very easily. But you cannot, at this point, pop out any Teams windows. So for example, if you are in a Teams call, it's not that easy to switch to the team Intranet at the same time that you are in a call. Or for example, like basic things like what's the difference between start a new conversation or to reply a conversation. It's basically training, but it's training you have to give to every single one in your organization. This rule thing, this is actually something pretty interesting, because it's a discussion about when do you have to make an official guideline, or when do you have to make official decision, and what's just common sense. Because, for example, if there's a news in Intranet and I want to react to the news, I want to create a discussion, but I don't maybe like the news. So if I give the news a thumbs up, does that mean that I agree with the news? Of course, nowadays you also have like the other reactions in Teams than just like, but that's also something they discussed. So does liking the post mean that you like the thing that you say in the post? And then the last thing, yeah, you still have the static instructions in OneNote, in SharePoint, in documents, but no one really still reads your static content. And that's a problem the tool doesn't solve. Okay, and then the ugly. I didn't want to take any ugly picture in here, so there is a picture of the puzzle, because I think Teams cloud environment, it's a huge puzzle, and it takes time to learn how to do those kind of puzzles. So of course, training, time consuming, but you need it, because IT skills in organizations vary a lot. Some are in super basic level. They don't know how to turn on a computer, and then some others are super fluent with Teams and everything. So if you are the slower person, if you are not that familiar with, for example, mobile tools or other kind of modern working tools, you are totally left out if your internet is now in your mobile phone. So that really divides people, and that's something you really should consider. And then the other thing, a bit ugly, is that when you someone wants to take control of my screen. So the other thing is that when you have waited for some new feature for a long time, for example, private channels. So if you have waited for private channel for like half a year, and then they finally arrive, they might be not what you expected. For example, with this customer, they really wanted to have private channels. They had some use cases for them, but then the private channels came and they weren't suitable for their use cases. So maybe my point in here is that try to utilize the features you have in Teams at the moment. Try to have like this Gen kind of feeling that it's not perfect, but it's good enough. And within years, within time, we can make it even more good, even more better. And maybe at some point it starts being almost perfect. Okay, so famous last words. If you want to replace your Intranet with Teams, I'd say be open. Of course, there are some really great advantages. For example, more discussion, more comments, more interactions, but of course, also some kind of limitations. I think you really should plan the team structure, go through some settings before you start. And then, of course, where should we utilize Teams? Where Teams does fit, where Teams doesn't fit. Because in the end, you still need some place for your static content. So for example, your documents, your instructions. So is it documents? Is it OneNote? Is it SharePoint? And in the end, you may still need the SharePoint in the background. So of course, I think that SharePoint and Teams is always better together. Yay, and that was my session. Thank you very much. And please write my session. And if you have any questions, I have still some time to answer your questions. Let's see the chat. Yeah, Alex asked in the chat that would I recommend using Wiki in Teams in any circumstances? Wiki in SharePoint is quite good. Yeah. I told about the Wiki in the session, and I think because the Wiki doesn't have any kind of what's the word? Because the Wiki doesn't have any kind of trash bin. So if you delete the Wiki by accident, it's gone. So that's why I would recommend using OneNote, or you can also use SharePoint, because it's not perfect. But SharePoint actually has these, oh, I don't know, I don't have any, but SharePoint actually has these anchor links at the moment. So you can also create a SharePoint site and utilize these anchor links a bit like Wiki style. Of course, it's not the same, but for some use cases, it could work. Okay, if no other questions, so I will say thank you very much more for listening, and I hope you enjoy the rest of your day.